All right. The GOAT, Caitlin Clark, had some things to say. Obviously, we saw the cryptic message Kelsey Mitchell put out there. Kelsey, you got to stop doing the cryptic messages, bro. You know it's going to stir the pot, girl. Come on now, Kelsey. I don't believe Kelsey is going anywhere. She is going to be an Indiana Fever. We got to get to what Caitlin Clark had to say, though. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel. Hit that bell notification and hype the video for your boy. Let's get into it. In an article here on Athlon Sports. Let's get to it. Here it says, Caitlin.
The WNBA didn't explode because of a trade. It didn't erupt because of a signing. It blew up because of one short comment from the most watched player in the league. And the wild part, most people still don't understand why it mattered. When Kelsey Mitchell posted a few words online, it looked harmless at first. But within minutes, fans were spiraling, rumors were multiplying, and timelines were filled with one question. Was Indiana about to lose another star? Then Caitlin Clark stepped in. Not with a statement, not with a press release, but with a response so brief, it somehow said everything. And what followed exposed tensions far bigger than one post, one league, or even one season. Because this story isn't really about a new team. It's about power, timing, and who actually controls the future of women's basketball. And it all started with a caption that felt anything but random. It was just a photo, a quiet moment, and one sentence that instantly sent fans into panic mode. Eyes open, mouth closed. That was it. No explanation, no context. Just Kelsey Mitchell standing in New Jersey, letting the internet do what it does best. Fill in the blanks with chaos. Within hours, speculation went nuclear. People weren't asking if something big was happening. They were asking how bad it was going to be. A trade? A fallout behind the scenes? A sudden exit from Indiana? And the timing made it worse. The Fever had already been under a microscope. Roster questions, league politics, offseason uncertainty. One vague post was all it took to convince fans that another shoe was about to drop. Mitchell's history didn't help either. She's never been the type to overshare. When she posts something cryptic, it's usually intentional. And that's exactly why this message landed differently. It didn't feel emotional. It didn't feel celebratory. It felt guarded, like someone signaling change without saying it out loud. WNBA fans have seen this pattern before. When players are restricted from speaking freely, they speak sideways. And to a fanbase already on edge, eyes open. Mouth closed sounded less like a quote and more like a warning. But just as the rumors started turning ugly, someone unexpected jumped into the conversation. And that's when everything shifted. Caitlin Clark didn't hesitate. She didn't wait for clarification. She didn't let the noise grow. She commented directly under Mitchell's post. Simple, casual, supportive. But make no mistake, that wasn't just a friendly reply. In a league where every move is dissected, Clark's response carried weight far beyond the screen. Fans instantly read between the lines, because when the face of the league speaks, even casually, it's never accidental. To some, it looked like loyalty. To others, it felt like reassurance. And to a lot of people watching closely, it came off as something else entirely: control. Clark could have stayed silent. And if she had, the rumors would have grown teeth. Silence would have implied uncertainty, distance, maybe even agreement with the speculation. Instead, she shut it down immediately. No drama, no explanation, just presence. And that's what made it powerful. Because Caitlin Clark doesn't comment on everything. She doesn't jump into every rumor. When she chooses to show public support, it's deliberate. Especially in a moment where the league was already dealing with fractures behind the scenes. Her response wasn't just for Mitchell. It was for fans, for media, and maybe even for people higher up who were watching closely. But here's the twist. Even after Clark spoke up, the confusion didn't disappear. Because the new team, everyone was panicking about, wasn't what they thought it was at all. And once that truth came out, the story didn't calm down. It got even messier. Here's where most people got it wrong. Kelsey Mitchell wasn't teasing a move to another WNBA franchise. She wasn't hinting at a trade request. And she definitely wasn't quietly packing her bags to leave Indiana behind. The new team, everyone was freaking out about, existed outside the WNBA entirely. Unrivaled, a 3-on-3 league built for the offseason. Faster pace, fewer players on the floor, more freedom, more exposure. And most importantly, more control for the athletes. Mitchell wasn't leaving the Fever. She was expanding her reach. She'd signed on to play for Hive BC, one of Unrivaled's featured teams, alongside a mix of rising names and proven talent. On paper, it sounded harmless, even exciting. So why did the reaction feel so intense? Because Unrivaled isn't viewed as just another offseason league. It's viewed as a statement. And for some people inside the WNBA ecosystem, it represents something dangerously close to competition. Once fans realized Mitchell wasn't abandoning Indiana, the panic softened. But the conversation didn't end, it shifted. People stopped asking where she was going, and started asking what Unrivaled actually means. And that's when the tension really began to surface. Unrivaled sells itself as opportunity. And for players, that's not just marketing, it's real. Shorter seasons, higher visibility during the offseason, a format designed for speed, skill, and individual shine. But beneath that clean pitch sits a much deeper concern. Unrivaled didn't launch quietly. It didn't test the waters. It arrived with confidence and timing that raised eyebrows across the league. The league kicked off just as WNBA labor negotiations were heating up. And to critics, that didn't feel accidental. It felt strategic. Because when players suddenly have options, leverage shifts. And leverage is the one thing institutions never like losing. Unrivaled gave players something they didn't have before, a visible alternative. Not a replacement, but a reminder that the system isn't the only path. That the calendar isn't fixed. That control doesn't have to be one-sided. That alone would have caused discomfort. But Unrivaled came with something even more unsettling. Powerful names. Not just players, but decision-makers. People with influence inside the very system now being indirectly challenged. And once that connection became impossible to ignore, fans started asking questions no one seemed eager to answer. Questions about loyalty, about priorities, and about whether the people negotiating the future of the WNBA were fully aligned with the league itself. And once those questions started circulating, the situation crossed a line. Because now, this wasn't just about where Kelsey Mitchell was playing basketball. It was about who benefits when players choose Unrivaled, and who might quietly lose control when they do. And that's where things turn uncomfortable. At first, critics whispered it. Then they posted about it. Eventually, they started saying it out loud. Several of the most powerful voices inside the WNBPA, the same group responsible for negotiating the future of the WNBA, also had direct ties to Unrivaled. Not as casual supporters, not as distant partners, as founders, as stakeholders, as people who stood to gain if Unrivaled grew. And that's where everything got complicated. Because the WNBPA isn't just symbolic. It negotiates salaries, benefits, working conditions. It sits across the table from the league office during the most critical conversations players will have for years. So when fans realized that some of the people leading those negotiations were also building a separate league, alarms went off. The question wasn't whether Unrivaled was good for players. The question was whether anyone could fairly negotiate for the WNBA while holding power inside a potential competitor. Supporters brushed it off. They said it was innovation, progress, player empowerment. Critics weren't convinced. To them, it looked like divided loyalty, like negotiating with one hand while building leverage with the other. And once that perception took hold, trust began slipping through the cracks. This wasn't just internet noise either. Media voices started circling. Analysts began connecting dots. And fans noticed something else that felt a little too convenient. The timing. Unrivaled didn't just launch during CBA talks. It debuted right as negotiations reached their most fragile stage. Right when pressure mattered most. And that's when a private conversation, never meant for the public, made everything worse. When the conversation surfaced, it hit like a lightning strike. A reportedly private exchange between WNBPA leadership and the WNBA commissioner spilled into the public eye. And inside it was a quote that immediately dominated headlines. The commissioner allegedly suggested that Caitlin Clark should be grateful for the money she makes off the court, implying that without the WNBA, she wouldn't have anything at all. Whether it was phrased exactly that way or not didn't matter. The message landed loud and clear. Fans exploded. Because to them, it sounded like the league taking credit for something it didn't create. Caitlin Clark didn't become a phenomenon because of marketing campaigns or institutional support. She became one because people couldn't stop watching her play. The backlash was instant. Suddenly, the narrative flipped. Unrivaled, once framed as a bold player-first experiment, became the backdrop for a public relations mess. What was meant to empower players now looked entangled in politics, ego, and power struggles. And the irony was impossible to ignore. Caitlin Clark wasn't even playing in Unrivaled. She had turned it down. Twice. Yet somehow, her name was at the center of its biggest controversy. For many fans, that was the breaking point. The situation stopped being about leagues competing. It became about respect. About who gets credit. About whether star power belongs to the institution or the individual. And right in the middle of it all stood Caitlin Clark, publicly supportive of her teammates, quietly distant from the drama, and completely unwilling to be used as leverage. Which brings us to the most telling part of this entire story. Because while everyone else was making noise, Clark chose something else entirely. Caitlin Clark had every incentive to jump in. From a business standpoint, Unrivaled made sense. More exposure. Fewer games. Controlled minutes. A spotlight designed for stars who thrive with the ball in their hands. And no player in the world draws eyes like she does. But Clark didn't just say no, she said no twice. That matters. Because in a league where visibility is currency, choosing not to appear is a statement in itself. Especially when the league asking you to join is actively shaping narratives around player power and league leverage. Clark understood something most people missed. Once you step into a space like that, you don't just play basketball, you become part of the message. Your presence validates the system. Your name gets used in rooms you're not invited into. And Clark wasn't interested in being anyone's bargaining chip. Her rookie season didn't go the way anyone imagined. Injuries limited her to just 13 games, cutting short what was supposed to be a full showcase of her dominance. Instead of chasing momentum elsewhere, she chose patience. Recovery over relevance. Longevity over headlines. That decision wasn't fear, it was discipline. And it allowed her to do something rare. Support her teammates without compromising her position. She could uplift Kelsey Mitchell publicly while staying completely detached from the politics swirling underneath. That's a level of control very few athletes ever reach. Clark didn't condemn Unrivaled. She didn't endorse it either. She stayed exactly where her power is strongest, independent. And that independence is what makes her voice matter more when she does choose to speak. Which is why her simple comment carried so much weight. Because when Caitlin Clark shows support without explanation, it's not impulsive. It's intentional. What happened here wasn't chaos. It was transition. The WNBA is no longer a league fighting for attention. It's a league deciding who controls it. And moments like this expose those growing pains in real time. Kelsey Mitchell didn't cause controversy by joining Unrivaled. The controversy existed long before she posted anything. Her move just forced it into the open. Players today are navigating something new. They're not just athletes anymore. They're brands. They're leverage. They're decision makers. And when multiple systems start competing for influence, tension is inevitable. That's why Caitlin Clark's response mattered so much. It showed a version of player unity that doesn't rely on slogans or sides. Support doesn't mean obedience. And independence doesn't mean isolation. Clark backed her teammate without endorsing every structure surrounding her decision. That nuance is rare, and it's exactly why fans trust her instincts. This moment also revealed something deeper. The future of women's basketball won't be shaped by one league replacing another. It will be shaped by overlap, by negotiation, by players understanding when to step forward and when to step back. Unrivaled isn't the villain. The WNBA isn't obsolete. But power is being redistributed, and everyone feels it. That's why reactions felt emotional. Why posts felt loaded. Why silence felt louder than statements. Because the game off the court is finally catching up to the talent on it. And players like Caitlin Clark aren't just surviving that shift, they're quietly mastering it. Because here's the truth. Stories like this don't show up on box scores. They don't trend because of highlights. And they don't get explained in press releases. They unfold quietly, in comments, timing, and decisions people overlook. And if you want to stay ahead of where women's basketball is actually going, this is the place where we break it all down. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, because the biggest stories in this league aren't always happening on the court. And the next one is already starting.